Hey everyone, before we start this new episode, if you like what we do, give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It will help get more viewers, and we will be able to do more of what we love, and that's talk about animation. Thank you, and on with the show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I will be your host this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, y'all.
And today's episode is an interesting one. We've got reviews for Riverdance, the animated adventure. We've got Hotel Transylvania, Transformania. Got The House. And last but not least, Sing a Bit of Harmony. But first, we've got some controversial trailers to talk about.
Only if the controversy was actually worthwhile. And sadly, with animation, that is never the case. You wish it would be, because, hashtag New Deal for animation and all that stuff. So let's talk about the new Crunchyroll original Adult Swim collaboration. The last one so far announced, Shenmue, the animation. AKA Shenmue, we came out way too late because.
So tell me again when the first Shenmue game was released.
Well, it was like before its release in 1999. It was in development like during the mid to late 90s. It was going to be for the Sega Saturn. And then when the Sega Saturn was just a failure, a sign of things to come for the Sega console market, it then got pushed to the Dreamcast, and it was this really ambitious narrative-driven adventure game with some action elements, but it was mostly just, it was different. It was more, I don't think cinematic would be the word. It was more story-focused, which was not a real thing unless it was like an RPG or something like that, where story took front and center. So the synopsis is 1986. Yokosuka. Ryo Hazuki has trained to master the Hazuki-style jujitsu under his strict father in the Hazuki dojo from his childhood. However, one day a mysterious man named Lan Di murders his father and takes the mirror his father was protecting. Ryo is determined to find the truth behind his father's murder, but soon finds himself getting stuck in a war between the underground organizations. Traveling from Yokosuka to Hong Kong, Ryo's long journey begins. So, the whole infamous history of this franchise is that it got 2 games, and it was planned to be I think an 8 to 10 game series telling this vast story. And, kudos to back then, that was not normal. Too bad that the games sold extremely poorly and then only got a fan base afterwards, which, all cult films, shows, games do.
Of course.
Then the third game was announced oh man, it must be almost a decade ago now. Well, it feels like almost a decade. After the Kickstarter, I don't want to say success stories because there are about as many good ones and bad ones. But, after Mighty Number 9, Broken Age, Shovel Knight, and all that stuff were huge successes. The original creator launched a Kickstarter campaign for a Shenmue 3, and then it took 5 years to come out, and then it finally came out, and everyone was like, what? Did we just wait 13 to almost 20 years for a game that feels like it just never left 2001 in terms of gameplay design and production values? And it was not a closing arc of the story. It was just the next step. And yeah, this franchise is a little cursed, to say the least. And I'm sorry, the show looks fine. Some of the action beats look decent, but they look no more distinct than something like from like the Baki series that's on Netflix, where it has mostly fine production values, and then when it wants to actually show some animation, it looks pretty decent. And that's how I feel about this. I mean, granted, some of the voice cast for the English dub is pretty solid with Austin Tyndall, Scott Gibbs, Natalie Rial, Kat Thomas, Jeremy Gee, Greg Ayres, Bryson Balgus, Lucy Christian, Christine Alton, Cody House, and Joe Daniels will be voicing the main characters.
That's a pretty solid cast.
Oh, very solid. And the animation will be handled by Telecom Animation Film. It's going to be directed by Chikara Sakurai, who is unfortunately known to be the director of the infamous season 2 of One Punch Man. You know, the one that got rushed out because the production committee was afraid that people wouldn't like One Punch Man a year from the previous season was released. So
already a red flag.
Kind of, but we'll have to see. Sometimes it's just production committees just not handling everything well. Just like everything in animation, a lot of the faults can be from time and budget. Speaking of, let's talk about the big surprise of this week, the Cuphead show trailer reveal and release date, February 18th.
So February is looking pretty solid.
So far, January and February have been very light months in terms of animated offerings, but what they do offer has been very distinct for the most part. We'll get into Riverdance, but it was really exciting to see something for Cuphead because it seems like we've been waiting for this show for what seems like years.
It was in June of 2020 where we first saw, like, you know, at the Annecy Film Festival, a little bit of a preview of the show. Then they showed us a little bit more the next year. And I gotta say, after seeing this trailer, the hype is now up to 11.
Oh, it looks fantastic. And we'll talk about the visual comparisons from the show and the game in a moment. But it does capture a lot of that zany cartoon spirit of the 30s and 40s. Now, I'm sure it's a little more specific to like the 40s than the 30s, but you know, it's a homage to that time period. I think you can forgive it if it tries to keep one foot in one decade and keep the other foot in the other decade. So for reference and tribute. But it does look great. And I do love that one line in a trailer when it's just like, when something gets in my way, I double down. And it's just like, what does that even mean? And I love the introduction of the devil where he's just like, hello. Just, well, for lack of a better word, devilish. Just like gleefully excited to take some new souls down into hell. I'm very curious to see how they translate the characters from the game to the overall. How many episodes are they doing? Are they doing like
12?
Okay, so 12. And who knows, this might be like season 1 for right now.
I have a feeling that we are definitely going to get more of this.
Yeah, because the original game was not very story driven. It was just like this big amazing tribute to old time era animation and was essentially a boss rush game. It had some platforming elements, but it was mostly a boss rush. You would go against tricky and very creative and visually stunning bosses that each had their own distinct flair and combat situations that you had to deal with. It was also an incredibly hard game. A lot of people are like, man, I love the animation. It's just not fun to play at points.
That's what I've heard. I don't know if I've seen enough actual playthroughs, but I've heard just stories about how the game is like almost impossible to play despite how gorgeous the animation looks.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of the things that kind of is a turnoff about this kind of game is that you can't beat the game 100%, or at least this is from what I remember when it was originally released. You weren't able to beat the game fully until you beat every level on hard mode. So you couldn't play through the quote unquote easier mode for each boss. You had to go to the hard mode. Yeah. And that's not fun. Don't cut content from games like that just and tell them like, get good. No, that's toxic. I don't like that kind of thing. Make it accessible, y'all. Otherwise, like the voice cast is really good. You got True Valentino, you got Frank Totoro, Joe Hanna, Luke Millington Drake, Gray Griffin, and Wayne Brady. And that's a pretty solid cast right there and then.
Matt Mercer as Pork Rind and Jim Conroy as Ollie Bulb, Biff, and Duke.
Yeah.
I love this cast.
The visuals are so charming. I love this kind of visual look. I mean, minus the racist aspects of what Rubber Hose Animation unfortunately was very known for at times. So, but luckily, from what I remember, Cuphead stayed fairly far away from that kind of stuff. It's just there were a lot of racist elements. Animation has a very
complicated history.
Yeah. Though that's why that one joke in I think it was like an Extreme Goofy movie where Pauly Shore's character is just like, why are we always wearing gloves?
That was in an extremely goofy movie.
But yeah, it was just like such a loaded meta joke. Oh, but let's talk about the small controversy revolving around this show.
The non-controversy.
We can't even go. It's January 2022, and we can't go a month in without one popping up. Anyway, the controversy is that animation fans who don't know any better or are not educated enough are complaining that the show is not a completely perfect one-on-one replication of the smooth, buttery, hand-drawn animation of the video games. This is what happens when animation fans do not follow behind-the-scenes production histories. This is what happens when you don't watch the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Basically, this is what happens when you don't do your fucking research.
A little more blunt, but yes. Because the original game that came out took years to make. Because doing the quote-unquote purest version of 2D animation
would take forever.
And it cost a lot of money. The developers had to basically remortgage their house to get this game funded until Microsoft came in. And this is also way before they started acting like Disney and bought up other studios. We're like, hey, if you let us distribute your game as a timed exclusive, we'll help you fund the game. And that's what happened. Doing proper 2D animation is a pain in the neck and a lot of TV animation. They don't have the time or the budget, and sometimes not even the tools or the talent to do so. I remember seeing this tweet because this became a huge thing, or like for a day and a half, because everyone in the animation industry had to call out this nonsense that people were spewing about this show. And it was like, why can't you just do what you did like within the video game? Well, let's say we don't have the time, the money, the talent, the tools. It's a lot of things. And then they get interrupted and be like, well, I don't care. Look at this Sakuga gif of this overworked anime crew from the 90s. Why can't you just crunch and do that? And it's just like, you guys, like the alien from Lilo and Stitch would say, educate yourself, because y'all need to realize how much time and money is a huge deciding point of how shows are made and look, especially adult animation. Good Lord, the nightmare stories I hear about all that. Like, you want to know why so many shows look alike? Time and money. It's always going to be time and money and depending on the team and talent, and just praying to whatever deity will listen, and some executive won't come down and be like, well, can't you be more like this show?
Something else I just want to bring up briefly, because we also talked about Crunchyroll earlier. The creator of High Guardian Spice, Ray Rodriguez, also put out a couple tweets about how basically Crunchyroll screwed them over by not really giving them the time, money, and resources to make that show look as good as it could have been.
Golly, and the whole internet just went bananas on that show. Like it was the second coming of Satan. Like, y'all need to chill. The animation fandom and scene needs to just chill out. Like, oh my goodness, y'all need to do better. Not to say you can't like hate anything. No, that's nonsense. If you don't like a show, you don't like a show. That's fine.
Have at least a modicum of compassion for the human beings behind the shows that you love or don't love.
Because people who make this are working hard. It's not like, oh, they didn't put any effort into this. No, it's time and money and talent. It's all in that little spectrum of what makes a show run and such. So I don't care that the Cuphead show doesn't look 100% perfect. If they did do that, we wouldn't be seeing this show next month. We'd be seeing this show like 3 to 4 years later. And considering how we don't know if there's going to be a Cuphead 2, well, it's a good idea to strike while the iron is hot, even if that is always not a good idea at times.
There's a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't aspect to even just the fact that this show is coming out 5 years after the original video game. So on the one hand, we understand that animation takes a while to develop, but also there's just enough distance from the original game that there's still a bit of a nostalgia factor to this, but also you don't want to release this too late because then you kind of are losing the fan base from the game,
Right. Well, luckily the game has DLC coming out. So it's not like this is coming out where it's like, wow, this should have been here like a year or two earlier. No, this isn't like that. I don't even think it's in production still anymore after what happened to the studio with Indivisible, which was going to be set for Peacock, but then that whole studio kind of imploded because the person who ran it was awful. So, which is a shame because the game is quite solid. But yeah, just be aware and make sure you read up about what actually goes into the process of animation. And for the love of gravy, if professionals from the animation industry, whether they are the actual animators, concept artists, storyboard artists, and writers, are telling you how the sausage is made,
listen.
Do not harass them. I don't know why that is so hard for some of you to understand and accept, that the animation industry isn't some perfect shindig. It's a job. You can't just run on passion the whole time. If everyone could run on passion, they would, but it don't. So once again, animation fans, do better. I know it's a vocal minority, but do better. So, this was a lot more interesting to talk about than our first film.
Yeah, first we got to get one of these out of the way. Riverdance, the animated adventure, a kind of sort of loose adaptation of the Irish theatrical dance show of the same name by composer Bill Whelan, directed by Dave Rosenbaum and Eamon Butler, with a screenplay written by Rosenbaum and Tyler Warren. An Irish boy and a Spanish girl journey into the mythical world of the Megalosaurus giganteus, who teach them to appreciate Riverdance as a celebration of life. Honestly, the most interesting thing I could muster from this movie is my own personal research on the actual Riverdance show, which I believe this premiered on February 9th, 1995. And the show has been running for, I guess, now 22 years. They won the Grammy for Best Musical Theater Album in 97. And this thing has been touring all over the world. So yeah, apparently people like this one.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's been kind of whittled down to kind of a punchline gag and such. Well, it depending on the show or the comedy you listen to or watch.
Oh, sure.
But it's iconic for a reason. You look at some of those dance performances and it's like, huh, that's pretty impressive. I mean, dancing itself is really just a whole art in its own.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I understand why someone would want to make a animated film based off of the iconic sensation. But I wonder what happened with production on this, because at worst, I found this to be a very underwhelming and very simple, in a bad way, film that was really hard to overall feel invested into. But at best, it's harmless. This is one of those animated films that comes out, makes a tepid splash, and then leaves. And then you don't think about it. I will say it's at least the more interesting film from the streaming service Sky, because it was a Sky original and then Netflix bought it for US distribution. So
Oh, that makes sense.
if I had to watch this or what was it? The other one that was released last year had like two different names. I think it was called like Dragon Rider, but it's also called like Fire Drake the Silver Dragon.
Oh.
So, you know, the whole title shenanigans, which seems to happen more than you would think in animation and just film in general. I would rather watch Riverdance, but that's not saying much.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. My thing with this movie is it's fine. It's overall enjoyed it, but like there's like nothing to glom onto. Not for lack of trying. There are a couple 2D animated sequences that looked great, but kind of pissed me off because that would have made even like the most generic story at least a little more enjoyable from a visual perspective. This, if you're going to tell such a generic hero's journey, you have to bring more to the table. You can't just settle for, generic human CGI designs and talking animals and then just call it a day.
The problem is, it seems like this production had a very bare bones elevator pitch style setup, and then once again, either weren't given the time or the money or didn't have the talent to do something more interesting with the dance sequences and just a bunch of people dancing. And apparently everyone in this small town that the boy lives in knows how to river dance.
Yeah, it's like his entire hometown just kind of knows the choreography.
It's like the whole economic power of this town is built and thrives on Riverdance. But with Riverdance, it's just more funny that everyone dances. It's like that scene from Rocko's Modern Life that makes fun of musical sequences, where it's just like, how did y'all know how to sing? We all have a song in our hearts. Yeah, but how did you do all of this? Oh, we practice every Thursday.
I love when Rocko's Modern Life makes fun of the entertainment industry.
Oh, exactly. You could somehow find a way to harness the energy that comes off of everyone dancing. You could have your own viable alternative energy source. You you can make it as powerful as wind and solar energy. If you know what I mean.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I'm just being sassy about this film because there's really not much else to talk about, which is a real bummer because I don't want to be like, it came out, it was fine, let's move on.
Something I can bring up is the honestly kind of strange phenomenon of, you know how like Disney is kind of well known for their animated musicals, and there have been, since the start of the Hollywood industry, there have been like several different stage adaptations, but very rarely we see animated adaptations of stage musicals. This and The King and I from '99 are like really the only examples we have.
I mean, it's interesting. And technically, there is another one. I'm just trying to remember what it's called. Um, Animation Pilgrimage brought it up. It's called like Halcifer and Rudiger or something like that, and it was based off of a play, if I remember correctly. And it was very interesting. If you can find a way to watch that movie, do so. It's just kind of an interesting little bit of animation history. But we're not here to talk about that. Really, the thing with Riverdance is that there are a few decent moments. Like I like the boy hanging out with his grandfather, who's played by Pierce Brosnan.
That casting is kind of perfect because Pierce Brosnan is, as much as people recognize him the most as like James Bond, he's also just very doofy. He fits that role kind of perfectly.
And then they also cast him as the leader of the Megalosaurus Giganteus, which I'm sure was supposed to be kind of thematic in a way because it's like his grandfather reincarnated as the leader of these giant deer. But it's very told like paint by numbers. In terms of a story of a kid coming of age and dealing with loss and becoming, I guess, more responsible, because apparently something happens to you that's terrible and off screen if you don't learn how to dance in this town.
Apparently.
No, it sounds like a parody of what like a Junji Ito story would be like. It's just like it's fine. There's just nothing really shocking or surprising. And the boy's relationship with the girl and her salsa dancing, which is also very impressive. It just doesn't do a whole lot to the overall story. They try to connect her like story arc of like, yeah, I can river dance, but I can also do salsa, and teaches it to one of the giant deer. And I'm sorry, but the two comedic relief deer are annoying. A lot of the comedy in this movie is annoying, and not annoying in like it's super loud. It just comes off that there was just no direction for the comedy.
The humor kind of feels like an afterthought in a way. Like the film went through some sort of like focus group and someone decided like we need some levity. The story is pretty dark. So they kind of at the last minute threw in some jokes here and there.
Or it just seems like they were told like, hey, we don't really have punchlines for y'all, so you can improvise. And they just chose the most annoying character traits for some of the characters. And like, it's 2022. Can we stop with the fat jokes? Like, I'm sorry, that's just so tiring. That's just like the one comedy character's joke is that he's fat. Now, granted, the designs for the deer are kind of fine and like interesting. I'm glad they don't fall into this pit trap and where a lot of animated films that use like animals that walk on two legs fall into. It's the fact that setup and structure the same when they're walking on two legs or four.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Like, have you seen like maybe I think it was like this Russian animated film called like Sheep and Wolves or something.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
Or it's just like something like that where they give more humanoid bodies to animals, and then when they're running, it looks really weird. Or it's like in that film where it's just like, so the dog can walk on two, but he's also walking on four at points.
Oh, that's Rover Dangerfield.
Thank you. Yeah, that. I like that they keep the deer like it wouldn't look weird if they go from 4 to 2 feet.
I think it is kind of cool how well they utilize their antlers. They use them as hurling bats. They're very useful when they don't have opposable thumbs.
Right. The dancing sequences are fine, but this is the film I kind of referenced 2 episodes ago when we talked about Sing 2. It's like you can't come out after Sing 2 and Belle and think that your dance sequences are going to look amazing. And I mean, the dances themselves are fine, but I'm sure they did some kind of motion capture, which is not a problem in of itself. But it just isn't as whimsical and as grand as you would think they would want to, because this is Riverdance.
The word you're looking for is flat.
It's very flat. And that includes our rotund friend, the what's he called? The hunter?
On Wikipedia, he's the badass huntsman.
Sure. I mean, granted, the like herding the Megalosaurus herd through the ravine is clever, and like you can see how he prepped everything, which decent hunter. But I guess I just don't quite get why they made a villain like this. I assumed there's some folklore elements that I could be missing, and that's totally understandable and okay to admit. Like if there is just a cultural element that I may be missing, but his design is just nothing special.
Design is like a big bouncy ball with legs and a face.
I mean, and like Brendan Gleeson is doing his best, but it's just a nothing performance. A lot of these characters have very nothing like characters to them. That's a shame because I love Pierce Brosnan and Brendan Gleeson as actors, but I had a very hard time remembering what went on in this movie. I saw this movie twice. Like I had a screener for it and saw it like once the screener expired when it was, officially on Netflix. And it just seemed like it's a film that went through one ear and out the other very easy. And I feel like a jerk saying that because, I'm sure they did what they could at the studio, which is like Anaventure and Cinesite. But, I wish there was just more whimsy put into the animation.
Same.
I really think I would have been more forgiving and enjoyed this more outside of its like bland story, bland character designs and what have you. If they just made the dancing sequences more entertaining. They even they did it with the Candyman sequence, which, that Candyman isn't actually a real character within the story. He doesn't add anything. He's just there to dance with candy. And even then, the candy dance sequence looks like something from when you go to a bowling alley and get a strike. I mean, it looks a lot better than those, but it just has that kind of vibe to it. And I feel bad that I'm so critical about this because I don't want to be critical about these kind of movies. It's fine. There's just not much else to it.
Because this is just on Netflix, there's really the only expense to watching this is 86 minutes?
Yeah.
But if you already have a subscription and you're curious, you could do much worse.
Yeah, no, there are definitely worse films on there to watch. And the music and the dancing are solid, and the 2D sequences are like in that kind of paper craft puppet style. That's a lot of fun. I like some of the little flourishes that they did put in. There just does seem to be like this problem with adapting musicals and plays, like with The King and I and such. Like I remember when I saw that film for the first time, I was like, something's not working here. It sounds like they're trying to be a Disney film.
Oh, they would 100% were trying to be a Disney film.
Yeah, which, WB was doing a lot of that back in the 90s, which really hurt them. It's kind of like when everyone wanted to be like Sonic, and it's just like, no, we already have a Sonic. stop.
One last thing I'll say about Riverdance before we move on. Now, I don't want to say that I think Cartoon Saloon should monopolize the whole concept of Irish folklore, but how much better do you think this movie would have been under Cartoon Saloon's production?
I don't know. I guess they'd still have to give them a certain time and budget to make it work, but I'm sure they would have come up with something. Let's I guess I just don't have much else to say for Riverdance. Just it's fine. Nothing really worth writing home about.
Yeah, this is one of those I can only passively recommend, which means we can finally move on to something a little bit more interesting. The fourth and final installment of the Hotel Transylvania film franchise, Hotel Transylvania Transformania. This one is not directed by Genndy Tartakovsky. Instead, we have Derek Dryman and Jennifer Klusta making their feature film debut, but it was written by Amos Vernon, Nunzio Randazzo, and Tartakovsky. Van Helsing's mysterious new invention transforms Drac and his pals into humans, and Johnny into a monster. With their new mismatched bodies, Drac and the pack must find a way to switch themselves back before their transformations become permanent. So, before we get to Transformania, your general thoughts on the Hotel Transylvania franchise?
Oh yeah, this will be our first time talking about the series officially. Sadly, it's with the final film, but you know. While not a perfect franchise, I have enjoyed the overall film series from Sony. It was, to me, a fairly groundbreaking franchise because it really kicked in the idea that Sony was on some new direction of how CGI animation was being handled.
Their innovation started with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, but I think what Hotel Transylvania accomplished is A, giving Genndy Tartakovsky a lot more clout now that he's broken into Hollywood, and B, it's kind of emboldened filmmakers to push the cartooniness of 3D animation.
Yeah, forgive me for forgetting about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 1 because that's very much the case, because it did seem like with Lord and Miller and Genndy, they went to Sony and said, like, to the teams, hey, can we do this? And they somehow did. They like took what like the first Ice Age did with like more cartoony comedic animation and then amped it up to 11. And golly, they did so many fun little details, like how they gave everyone a different walk cycle and different distinct animations. Just a very snappy, fast pace that would pretty much lay the groundwork for what Sony's comedy based films would do. Now, granted, while I like the first film, like despite its flaws, I really found the second film to be fine. Like definitely the weakest of the franchise at that point. Just because sometimes it seems like with, at least with the Hotel Transylvania franchise, there's kind of a struggle to get from point A to point B. The overarching story is not the most important aspect, and what is important are the shenanigans, the visual gags, and the jokes that come with this kind of situation and premise, which a lot of it's very funny. A lot of it's not, though. Though I still get a huge kick out of Frank telling Mavis in the first film, being like, oh, y'all are just overreacting. It's not so bad out there. Now, kid, watch out for fire. Fire bad. Just a look on his face. And then like when he has that freak out in the town, and especially in the third film when they're on the train, like to me, like Hotel Transylvania 3 is the best film in the franchise.
Easily.
It's the most fun I think they're having. And it just seems like it actually had a story to really go with. And it wasn't just Drac trying to undermine his own daughter and her happiness, because it actually put Drac driver's seat and was about him growing as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that was like the worst part of the second film. Like after rewatching the franchise again, Drac is kind of the worst part of Hotel 2 because how of his constant lying and undermining what Mavis and Johnny want with their son, because he just wants a vampire and is trying to force it out of his son. And like the whole story is about like mixed family situations, discrimination, and then like loving who your family is. And then he just kind of gets what he wants anyway. Like it probably was going to happen anyway with his grandson being like a vampire or part vampire. But I don't know. It seemed like it did just undermine the moral of the story of the second one.
So I'm on Wikipedia right now, and I have a little tidbit about the production of Hotel Transylvania 2. It was suggested by director Genndy Tartakovsky that Adam Sandler had more creative control over this film than his predecessor, and that at times he was difficult to work with. We'll get back to that in a second, but if you have like complaints about the second film, because for better or for worse, Hotel Transylvania 2, despite the admittedly great animation sequences, this one, out of like the rest, feels a lot more like a Happy Madison production, despite the fact that Happy Madison is never actually credited.
Yeah, it's like, oh, if it's just Adam Sandler brought his friends along for the ride.
Basically, yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not going to say no to hanging out with Steve Buscemi.
Of course not.
Or Keegan-Michael Key. Like that was always kind of a weird misconception that like Adam Sandler and Happy Madison had more involvement. It's just Adam and his friends. So, though, like I said with the third film, just a blast. I still remember seeing it in theaters and just having a lot of fun, and the families there were enjoying it thoroughly. And golly, the animation just of the franchise just perfected with that third film, and just how expressive the characters were, the movements, and just how they were like, oh my gosh, they cracked the code for 2D animation via CGI in that regards.
I saw Hotel Transylvania 3 twice in theaters, mostly because I think the third act is like probably one of the best that I've seen out of like in the entire franchise, even though like it almost makes no sense musically that someone as old as Van Helsing would be into, I don't know, hypnotic techno music.
Right.
Well, Johnny was the one playing all the classics.
Yeah. And wasn't it the solution in the final nail in the coffin that defeated the villain, like the Macarena or something?
Yes.
But I understand the kind of polarizing nature these films have. They're very loud, very like just in your face. And yeah, sometimes the jokes weren't all funny. It was an enjoyable franchise. I wouldn't mind owning like the first and third film, or at least having a collection of the films on Blu-ray or something.
Oh yeah.
I could easily like sit down and watch the third one from time to time, just if I needed something to relax to. Now this fourth film, yeah, I don't want to say or assume anything because we don't know what the production of this film was like, but it'd be hard to not think that something happened behind the scenes. Not just like with how Adam Sandler and Kevin James don't return, because honestly, Brian Hull and
Brad Abril,
how the two of them actually do fine, but the energy from the previous films, like while it's there with the snappy animation, and we'll get into that because that's still the film's biggest strength.
Oh, totally.
It just wasn't as good as the third film. And maybe it's like a Star Trek situation. Some people like the even numbered films over the odd numbered films and vice versa.
That could be it. My thing with this movie is, for better or for worse, you can tell that these are first time directors. Now, granted, the first Hotel Transylvania was Genndy's feature film debut, but even then, he had the Dexter's Lab movie, Ego Trip from years ago. So he obviously had more experience.
Well, even then, if you watch Samurai Jack,
Oh, yeah.
That's super cinematic. So he understood the format of film more so than like other directors that go from TV to film.
Right.
But I think something is missing when Gindi was not there. And I'm wondering if that's actually kind of like what is dragging down the film, because on one hand, the premise could easily unload onto very creative gags with Van Helsing's monster slash human ray and how Drac gets turned into a human, Johnny gets turned into a monster.
By the way, Johnny's transformation is still one of my favorite examples of how wild the animation gets.
Yeah, and I remember when the trailer came out and they showed like bits and pieces of Johnny's transformation. Everyone was just like, "Hey, Sony, is everyone okay there? How the hell are they pulling this off?" I mean, they must be doing something to those animation rigs to make them like squash and stretch as extreme as they do for that one sequence. And I think Johnny's monster form leads to some of my favorite bits of animation of the year so far. Just his movements, how he reacts, and just how it overall looks.
And like the Godzilla references.
Oh, yeah.
They make.
It's just a lot of fun just to see that one character move around. So it's not like a whole lot has changed via the animation, because nothing has. It's just gotten really good. And I wouldn't blame everyone working on this film being like, well, we don't have much, so let's just flex a little. And there are some cute gags, like how Frankenstein turns fully human and he's hot, or in the film's definition of hot. I like Steve Buscemi's character and just how normal he looks. Murray is very funny with how he's just an old man. The Invisible Man gag with him actually being naked tires itself out a little bit, like right at the beginning, but then they pick it back up with Blobby turning into a plate of jello, and then they're just like horrified. That's a great scene. I love that.
Blobby might actually be my favorite character out of the Drac pack.
Yeah, that whole sequence was great. And of course, seeing Van Helsing again and Jim Gaffigan, he was great. I loved how he moved around his lab and like how he would like contort, or like his arm would show up like far away than his head. He's like, "Oh, I found it." Then his arm would go through like this little maze.
They really have a lot of fun playing around with Van Helsing's steampunk cyborg design.
Yeah, just a lot of fun there.
There are so many great animation moments. Even the joke that Mavis has about the Invisible Man. Don't you recognize me? I've literally never seen you before. It's a stupid joke. It's an easy joke, but it got me.
Like, I think overall, the animation is great. That's the biggest praise that we have for the animation.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I think the biggest problem with the film is its story. I think it just has a very, I guess I would call it a direct to video style story. They had to really stretch a very simple plot out, and then they also had to regress a few of the characters to make it all work.
Yeah, it's the same problem we have with 2, in that a lot of what drags this down is Drac kind of repeating bits of his arc from the first film in not trusting Johnny, and just like kind of the differences between them. What makes this more frustrating is that he's already been through this arc twice already.
Yeah, there was no need for him to go through, can I trust Johnny or can I love him again for a third time. The marketing played up the whole like Johnny gets turned into a monster and Drac and his friends get turned into humans and one plate of lime jello, and they don't do a whole lot with it. And what they do end up with in terms of just like gags or story arcs, it ends up with a lot of the characters coming off way worse than they do in the previous films. Frank is just useless, and Wayne like it's like, oh, my wife gets to now deal with like all like 500 million kids that we have, while I get to get off scot-free. And like I said, the Invisible Man stuff with him not wearing clothes, it's just so
tiring and kind of pointless.
yeah. Now, if you want to talk about pointless, what about that mega amazing ninja cameo?
Once I found out like who he was in the film, I'm like, wait, that's it? You're literally just putting him in that scene?
He's in there for like 2 shots and 1 shot at the credits because he gets a credit for having 2 lines. No, you don't do that. Plus, nobody cares about Ninja anymore. If you really wanted to do a Ninja cameo, you would have done it like maybe 2 to 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Or like whenever Fortnite got big. It's like you could take them out and you wouldn't miss a thing. At least the cameos from previous Sony animated films made sense. Like there was Post Malone and appears in Spider-Verse. He appears in that scene when after like the big interdimensional portal thing goes awry and like this lamppost gets like screwed over by the Spider-Verse stuff. And he's standing there, he's like, I don't know. Maybe it's a Banksy. See, like that's cute and that's fine. But here it's just like, I honestly do think, and I remember Ninja only had like 2 lines. And such a boring design. And that's a shame that I have to say boring in a Hotel Transylvania film.
That shouldn't happen.
Just don't have them. Don't do these pointless cameos. At least the Smosh guys who appeared in the first Angry Birds film played characters that showed up more than once throughout the whole movie. Mavis and Drac's wife, they just don't do a whole lot in this movie. They get sidelined again for a huge chunk and then show up in the second half. And to be clear, the second half is when it gets a lot more fun.
Oh yeah. The second half is the reason why I'm a little bit more positive on this than most people, sure. But I'm a little bit more positive on this than 2, even though they're both kind of bottom tier.
At least 2 had Mel Brooks as the grandfather, and I did love the camp sequence. And like at the end when that huge obvious lawsuit tower fell down and then Frank fell into fire and then he just torched all the cabins. At least there was like fun stuff like that. Here it just really seemed like they were just dragging the whole story out because they had to. It's like they were told by Sony, it's like, hey, we're going to make a bunch of original movies in a row. So in return, you got to make 1 more Hotel Transylvania movie, even though 3 pretty much wrapped up everything.
Pretty much.
And it's not like the moral of the story isn't good. It's like you love the person on the inside, even if they have some rough edges on the outside. The marshmallow analogy was decent. And when they finally try to get the crystal and then have to deal with Johnny in his full-on monster mode, there's some decent gags and such. Like I love when they think they're about to sink and drown, and then it just turns out it's like 2 feet of water and they were right there. But then it just seems like it wraps up very quickly, which is very fun. I do like the little thing when they get back to the hotel and the giant hamster chews off a bite, and then Drax is like, oh heck no to this nonsense, and then just zaps it. I think the biggest problems are the story's not strong, it's not well paced, and the only thing holding it all up is the amazing character animation.
The animation is truly the thing that carries this from start to finish. Whereas the story, I can kind of understand what they were going for. This being the final Hotel Transylvania film, obviously they're going to start with something as big as Drac is retiring. But like, it feels like what they did to get from point A to point B is take the scenic route and kind of overcomplicated what should have been a more simpler story.
Yeah, and people don't mind simplicity. You just have to execute it well enough. Because when people say it's like, oh, it's simple, like quote unquote, in a bad way, that's when they notice. Like,
Mhm.
really, it's always execution. And
On paper, I don't mind the more grand adventure aspect of this. I just know if it necessarily fits with the inciting incident.
I just think this whole film's just a bunch of wasted potential that they were either not given enough time to do, or there was just like a real let's get this done and see what happens, because we have some, to be frank, way more interesting project in the works
Hell,
than.
Gendy himself has way more interesting projects that he wants to get off the ground.
Yeah, so I don't know. Once again, we, like, you and I know nothing about what's going on behind the scenes all the time. I don't think animation fans should be saying, here's what happened, when they don't actually know what happened. So we don't know what happened here. But yeah, I liked it more than Riverdance, but it's definitely one of the weaker films of the year so far. Just for as a quick ranking, how would you rank the Hotel Transylvania films?
I'm going to do this in a tier ranking style. So on the top tier would be 1 and 3, and bottom tier are 2 and 4.
I would go third film, then the first film. I think then the second to last one would be Hotel 2, and then the last one would be Transformania.
Fair enough. Overall, I'm glad that this franchise exists, and I'm glad that Gendy and these new directors and just the entire Sony Pictures animation team got to play around with these characters, and feels like these guys had a lot of fun on the job. I'm glad that audiences got to enjoy that fun with them.
And, it's free on Amazon Prime. I think, you can't lose much.
Yeah. The only price you're paying is 87 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. But now let's get into, well, I guess what we would consider two of the best things that were on offer with January, a notorious dump month of films, with our first real Netflix offering, because I know they brought over Riverdance, but that's just a US distribution thing.
Right. This is the first, well, as far as we know, this is like the first Netflix stop motion project that we're getting this year, assuming no more delays on the other two.
Yeah, we'll have to see how Wendell and Wild and Pinocchio turn out.
So The House is a British stop motion adult animated anthology film comprised of 3 short films, all written by Enda Walsh and directed by Emma DeSwaif and Mark James Rolls, Nikki Lindroth von Bar, and Paloma Beza. These shorts all span across different periods of time and different characters, but they all kind of live in the same vaguely defined house. So we'll start with the first part, which is titled "And Heard Within, a Lie is Spun." So what do you think of the first one?
This first short is done by the duo of Emma DeSwaif and Mark James Rolls. And if their names and their visual look for their short look familiar, that's because they did the 2018 film This Magnificent Cake, and which was a 45-minute anthology film.
I thought that style looked familiar.
You can tell it's them because of how they design their humans, with round heads, tiny faces, and yet it's like some of the most expressive animation stop motion you'll see. And this project is weird, not just this short, but just the overall idea of this anthology trio of shorts, because Netflix was very adamant that this was going to be a limited series. You would be watching these shorts like one at a time, but instead they shoved them all into one 90-minute movie, or pseudo 90-minute. Yeah, 97 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what happened there. Like, did they think that nobody would watch all 3 like in a row? Kind of like what Disney does with a lot of their shorts, projects, like Pixar popcorn and whatnot, because like on one hand, I kind of understand why they maybe turned it into a movie, and I hope it's not because of some shady, scummy, underhanded thing with Netflix, because they're fronting the bill for this. But it's just interesting because everywhere kind of labels it as a limited series or a TV series.
I find that kind of interesting. I think maybe their thought process was because there is some sort of like thematic tie-in, or at least like a location tie-in. It just made sense to package them all together.
Right. We'll have to see if there's any actual explanation for it. For the first short, I think overall the shorts are great. I love anthology films, and I mostly love it because they're a great way to tell small stories through one kind of motif or like overarching theme. That's why I like Memories, and that's why I like Robot Carnival or Short Piece and what have you. Like, because, a lot of those deal with one theme. Robot Carnivals, obviously, with robots. Memories is more sci-fi adjacent. And granted, they're all short stories written by Katsuhiro Otomo originally.
Mm-hmm.
And here, every short in the house takes place in, well, the house. This one is very interesting because it's about a family who's really looked down upon by everyone else. And the dad, one night drinking his shame, encounters someone who offers them a very nice house with really no strings attached per se.
Or so we think.
It turns into like this, you said in your letterbox review, this is all like told from the perspective of the kid, which I think that's horrifying. Like, that's a really good angle to take this horror story.
Oh, certainly.
Do we want to talk about spoilers, like, so we can kind of dive into some of these stories a little?
Yeah, might as well. Still tread a little bit lightly, but we kind of have to talk about a particular twist. We got to get into body horror.
Okay, so spoilers here on out for the 3 shorts. Essentially what happens to the family is they become so obsessed with being wealthy that, like, over time, this guy who is essentially grooming them into the house, and because of some ominous force, who is the patron, like, who made this house for this family, essentially, like, gets them to be so obsessed with their wealth and class that the mother and father literally turn into the, like, items that they cherish so much. AKA the father gets turned into a chair and the mom gets turned into, was it drapes?
Yeah.
And you can see it slowly unravel to that conclusion. And so, to be clear, this is a horror / dark comedy film, but do not expect this to be like a more mainstream horror film with like jump scares or blood and hyper violence or what have you.
This is more like a kind of like an A24 atmospheric kind of horror.
Well, it's a psychological horror that comes into fray, and with obvious body horror elements. At least for the first 2, there are body horror elements. And it's more like methodical and like philosophical per se, with the themes and the settings of the house. But man, there are some legit creepy moments in that first short, like especially with the guy like laughing in the corner, then you see that giant being appear behind him.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Oh, that made me jump. But it wasn't like a jump scare. It was just like, whoa. And just when you find out exactly what's going on. And a lot of this is just kind of symbolic and in the air for you to figure out what's going on. But I never felt like, man, what is going on? Like, what does this mean? Why did the parents turn into furniture?
There's a lot of kind of like allegory surrounding, you know, a little bit of classism, and it's a lot more symbolic than actual reality. It's kind of like their version of the metamorphosis, but instead of bug creatures, they turn into furniture.
Speaking of bugs, let's talk about the second short. Then Lost is Truth That Can't Be Won, which is about a what's his name? A developer rat is refurbishing the house, which of course has changed location, but it's still the same house per se.
Yep.
And he's setting it all up. He's spending a lot of money to get investors interested and get like hopeful buyers to, you know, purchase the house and such. And he's working really hard on it, keep making sure the bugs are out of there. When the open house happens, nobody's really buying the house. They're all just kind of like, this is a weird house. Something's not right here. And they start leaving. But then a very odd couple show up and they say, we are very interested in the house. And they end up staying there for better or worse, saying they want to buy the house from the guy, but they don't actually buy the house.
if anything, they're just freeloading.
Well, we'll get into that with the ending, but I really like the look of the visual because each of these shorts have a distinct visual look. Like with the first one, you have the humans done in the same style as the duo director's previous work. And here, Nikki Lindroth von Bar brings his distinct visual style of animals to stop motion. Mm-hmm. And he did Nikki was the one who did this short called The Burden.
Yep.
It's really good. That's probably one of my favorite animated shorts ever. It does look like if Wes Anderson went to A24 to make a horror film. It looks like one of his stop motion films.
It does. I kind of love in all three of these how much detail is put into everything. I can't tell if there's any CGI in the film because it all looks handmade. Everything from characters themselves to like the fire in the fireplace in the first short and like the food in this one.
It's all pretty handmade with the CGI and computer tech like using for polish and to help with a few shots and what have you. So the second story starts to slowly unravel as the developer is driven insane by the odd couple that came because they're just freeloading, eating, taking baths, sleeping. The developer has basically turned into a butler of sorts and is basically going bankrupt with not selling this house and the odd couple not buying the house. And he's talking to someone on the other end of the phone constantly, up to the point to when even two police officers come in and say like, hey, this person told us that you keep calling him. You got to stop doing that or we'll arrest you. And then right when that last bit of sanity snaps, more individuals that look similar to the odd couple arrive. And you find out that the odd couple were these rat bug hybrids that looked like the bugs that were infesting the house as the developer was refurbishing it all. I think there were themes of like gentrification here because he was trying to say like, oh, you bugs don't belong here. Oh. Then at the end of the short, the bugs were like, we were here before you. Which then it kind of ends in there's a random dance sequence with the bugs, which that's where some of the comedy comes. And I'm sure there is something funny about the first story with like, what's the fate of the parents? They turn into furniture, which is like, okay, that's kind of funny, but it also helps with the horror and symbolic nature of it all. Mm-hmm. And that's the same here with the bug hybrids. Basically, like, are the bugs that the developer was trying to get rid of. And then at the end, even the developer regresses back to just being a mouse. Yeah, that's a very dark and sad ending.
Yeah. Have you noticed so far that like the first two shorts do not have a happy ending? And even the second one, it almost borders on like mean-spirited, especially when you get the reveal of like who the developer has been contacting.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And these are just so far very interesting shorts. I love how these have unraveled so far. Like when I was watching them, definitely a lot of symbolism and commentary to be had that the film is definitely not holding your hands for. So,
oh, absolutely not.
You kind of have to pay attention to how the stories unravel with these two. But then we have the third story. Listen again and seek the sun. This one's an interesting one premise wise, that it takes place like during a time in the future where everything is flooded. That's not fun to think about. Especially right now with the weather and all that jazz. And the house is like the last thing on this island. And a landlord cat is trying to refurbish the house and just nothing's going right. The two tenants that she does have don't pay rent in a traditional sense. And then when everything is just kind of about to snap for her, this unknown cat comes by.
Cosmos,
who's voiced by Paul Kaye.
No relation.
Yeah, no. And then just starts to really like his arrival there tends to start changing something for our main character. For I guess you kind of have to like think of it as good or bad depending on how you see it. Because I don't know.
Out of all three shorts, this one I think was probably my favorite, not just because the ending actually ends on a positive note, but there is just generally something more hopeful and optimistic about it. At least that's kind of the intention of Cosmos coming in and really kind of shifting the energy of the place.
I feel like this story deals with a lot of depression, because it just seems like the growing waters, the house that's not being perfectly refurbished,
and the fog that hangs over the horizon.
Yeah, and then like that one dream sequence where Rosa thinks like her friends weren't actually there and such. Like there's that one bit of doubt where I feel like she's thinking like, oh, are these people actually real or not? Am I just alone? But yeah, it does end on a way more hopeful note of Rosa getting away from there and joining the three, like Cosmos, Jen, and Elias, as they go find a new place to live, like as a family and such. And man, I just love that how distinct these three shorts are. I can never say like, well, one of them is a better version of the other, or
oh no, they all kind of stand alone and they all have something unique about them. Really, the only connective tissue is like the location. But it's just so cool that Netflix has given these filmmakers a platform to just kind of express themselves in a way that only they know how.
The voice cast is also pretty good for this. It doesn't have as many big recognizable names. I mean, I'm sure some of them are more recognizable to you than others. Like we do have Matthew Good and Helena Bonham Carter, who show up in like the first and third shorts.
Yep.
Then we got like Claudie Blakely, Mia Goth, Mark Heap, Miranda Richardson, Stephanie Cole, Jarvis Cocker, Yvonne Lombard, Sven Volter, Tommy Hibbets, Aisha Antoine, Susan Wolkema, Paul Kaye, and Will Sharp. And they get the job done very well. Like, I think for what they were able to do with these shorts, the English casting is great.
Oh, yeah. This is about as good of a cast as you're going to get for relatively small production.
Right. And if they are going to make more of these, I guess, like, I don't know what their plans are, because, you know, you can't say it's a limited series and then
do like a second season or whatever.
Yeah. Or make it like a second movie or something. I mean, I don't know exactly what their plans are, but I guess I wouldn't mind seeing more like the House 2 or something.
Or just like, I don't know, maybe like call this like the Nexus anthology or something. I don't know.
Right. No, this was a great first real big animation offering for January because we mentioned this before. January is an infamous dump month where if you aren't seeing the award season stuff, it's whatever companies are willing to drop in January and either make a few bucks or just take the hit.
Pretty much, yeah. It's no different on a streaming service. Like Netflix is kind of notorious for just basically like the Netflix equivalent of a hit and run is like, oh, this movie comes out on January 14th. Okay, bye.
Yeah. Or it's like, oh, we'll bring this over, but you gotta also check this out because we bought it on the down low. It's just interesting to see something like this. And I'm just so happy it exists. It's probably going to stay in my top 10 for a while. We'll have to see how this year unfolds, but I can definitely see the House staying in my top 10. It's at least in the top 2 right now. And I've only seen like 5 animated films this year, so
I've only seen 3, but it's up there. I hope it stays in my top 5 or top 10 for at least like half of the year.
I think what's going to be helpful about the House is now you can watch this during Halloween, and I think it's a film that does well on rewatches. That like you get to pick up on the little story beats and the symbolism and like what it all means and such. And then maybe you can find some of the humor in it, which it's not traditional comedy.
Yeah, it's a British dry humor.
And very dark humor because you're supposed to laugh at the fact that the developer is dealing with what you think are squatters at first. Or like I said earlier, the house turning the 2 parents into furniture. Yeah, that's all I have to say about the House.
This one comes highly recommended.
Now let's talk about one of the first Funimation co-productions to come out of Sony. I'm going to assume that these co-productions happen because Sony gave them a little more wiggle room with money to spend on different projects, because this was one of the first ones announced alongside Tribe 9, and she proclaimed herself the wise man's grandchild, which we'll talk about next time because we're going to talk about the anime. But anyway, we're here to talk about Sing a Bit of Harmony, the first film from Funimation this year, which is directed by Yasuhiro Yoshiura. It's co-written by Yoshiura and Ichiro Okochi, and is produced by JC staff.
Yeah, so with this film, and this synopsis is notoriously vague, a mysterious girl named Xian transfers to Kaibu High School, where she quickly becomes popular due to her open-hearted personality and exceptional athletic talent. However, she's secretly an AI in the testing phase. What the synopsis doesn't spoil is the person in charge of running the tests for this AI is the mother of the main protagonist. And that has its own baggage to address. But overall, Cameron, your general thoughts?
Well, being an anime connoisseur as myself, as I wear a fancy suit and bow tie and eat caviar on the daily, I really enjoyed this movie. I was a little worried because some of the co-productions from Funimation during this anime season were not fully working for me. So I was a touch worried about this movie. And then I've seen the director's previous work and how the other co-writer worked on those Berserk films from Studio 4C and some other films like that we haven't seen, or like they haven't been brought over, like 7 Days War, which I'm shocked that hasn't been brought over
Still?
But yeah, still. There are like a handful of animated films from Japan that I guess will just take freaking forever to come over. But yeah, I thought Seeing a Bit of Harmony was just a very delightful surprise. Not that I don't have my issues with it. I do, and we'll get into them.
Oh, sure.
But in general, like what I like about this recent trend of like doing this podcast and following the animation releases of every year, I like this trend that's happening with directors and teams with projects that are maybe not going to match what the bigger studio releases are going to put out. Like I'm sure Inuo and the Deer King might be better than a Sing a Bit of Harmony, but we'll have to see. But what they do instead is just focus on making the best experience that they can on that level. Like last year we had Witch Dragon and SEAL Team and Words That Bubble Up Like Soda Pop, where yes, they're not the biggest, most bombastic and flashy looking films. Well, Words That Bubble Up Like Soda Pop looks amazing on a color palettes level, but my point is they make these super well executed experiences that are just a lot of fun to watch. And Sing a Bit of Harmony is that kind of experience.
I think I like this a little bit more than you, and we'll get into the reason why in a moment. I'll admit it. Part of it is the musical bias.
There it is. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. No, before I watched this screener, like I watched a little bit of it yesterday and then just started it over today before we did the podcast. And I was just like, huh, this is maybe a musical. I'm going to tell Mike that. Hold on. And then I watched it and then it's like, oh yeah, no, Mike's going to like this.
He knows me too well at this point. I do.
What was your favorite kind of aspect of this movie?
I think my favorite aspect of it was a couple things. One, I really like this group of high school students. You really believe their chemistry, the friendship that they all have. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just really fun hearing Ian Sinclair voice Go-chan, who is like, he's an interesting character. He claims he's the 80% guy, but there's a lot more to him than even he lets on.
Yeah. This is a very good cast of characters. And while you may have seen these kind of characters before, like you got the bubbly optimist with our main character, Shion. And then you got like Satomi, who's the loner, the reclusive one who nobody likes because she's a snitch, even though she was just doing what anyone would do. Toma is like the tech nerd. Go-chan is like the popular boy. Aya is a popular girl. And then Thunder's the beefy, like sports guy character that you would see in like an 80s Goonies, Rascals kind of story. But like I said earlier, it's all in the execution and they give them like a lot of like complexity to their characters. They are more than just the one note archetype that they could have easily been, because maybe it's just because I'm slightly cynical with how the anime industry is run. This could have been so easy to make Shion the main focus of the movie. And because she would be like the one that you would make statues and model figures out of, or what have you, merchandise. But they don't make her the main focus. It's really her and her interactions with everyone else, and then
she's the drop in the bucket that affects the rest of the people around her.
Right, that's what I like about it. And they actually make all these characters feel like characters, and you would get that from like a really good 80s or Brat Pack kind of film.
The way I would describe the sort of camaraderie between these characters, it's like there's a little bit of Breakfast Club meets E.T. and AI. That'll make more sense once we kind of talk about the second half of the film, which gets, honestly, it shifts tone a little bit, kind of like Parasite. It does a lot better job managing the different tones than most other films.
Like we said, it's like an 80s Brat Pack film, just without all the problematic elements of it that come with that. Because I'm sorry, I know some of those films are iconic and important to the film landscape of that time period, but here's a secret: it's also okay to call out the parts that don't age well. And I just like that they each got like a little time to develop themselves. I like that the popular boy and girl are more than who they are. And I understand that where the popular boy is coming from. He's not fully confident in himself. And I totally get that when, even though everyone's like, he's the dreamboat of the school. Really, one of my favorite little interactions is Shion and Thunder.
That's a scene that kind of surprised me. I wasn't sure how that was going to be executed, but the way it turned out, that won me over.
Well, it was like a mix of like, because Thunder's a judo student and he's been training very hard and constantly breaking the judo robot that he trains with, which is a constant gag in the film. And then Shion like offers to train with him, and she thinks that like everyone is dancing, and like because she's got this mindset of like everything's like a fantasy story, like with princesses, very Cinderella, Swan Princess kind of stuff, or like more on the Disney side of Cinderella and what have you.
Right.
And she thinks this judo competition that's going on is like everyone's dancing. So her training with Thunder is like a dance, which, yeah, it looks silly and ridiculous and it's very funny and well animated. It's like what we said last time, where it's like wrestling is a lot like dancing. It's a lot of coordination and movement.
Yep.
So judo is very much like that. I've done Aikido, which is not exactly the same as judo, but you're still like, if you wanted to, you could technically flip someone onto their back if you wanted to. I was a little worried what they were going with Toma. Like, I thought he was to be kind of creepy, and I was like, oh, I don't like this at all. Like with him following the footage of Satomi.
I'll admit that did get me worried for like maybe 2 seconds until get into it later.
Yeah, no, they do expand on their relationship and friendship before later on in the film. And it's very nice. I'm glad they did that, because I'm sorry, I can't deal with characters with very stalker-like mentalities anymore. Like, we're going to call that nonsense out. It's not funny and it's not really endearing. I was not expecting this to be a musical. It was interesting at first when I heard the announcement of this movie. I thought it was going to be like a choir film or something. So I was like, okay, so the main thing's going to be like this building up to a big musical performance, and everyone there is part of this choir group, like club or something. Was not expecting this to be a sci-fi story.
That actually kind of threw me off, like in the first, basically the first 5 minutes, where I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's why she is the way she is.
Yeah, and I also wasn't expecting there to be as many songs as there are in this one. And they're all distinct and different. There's never one where it's like, oh, this is just a worse version of this one or anything. I do like the song that Shion sings during the judo training. And I thought all the songs were pretty good. And I thought Megan Shipman did a great job singing, because, you know, you got to be prepared to know how to sing in anime. So
yeah, I said this even in my quick thoughts, that translating Japanese songs into English, first of all, translating Japanese dialogue into English already is a challenge, let alone translating song lyrics. It's twice as hard, because you still have to match the lip flaps and you have to kind of massage the cadence so that it still like flows and doesn't sound like awkward.
For some reason, there was a really bad animation tweet that came out today where someone was like, people just don't know how good it was in the with anime in the 90s. And I felt like Danny DeVito and It's Always Sunny, with that one scene where he's trying to push someone off the rooftop of a building with a big like 2x4 piece of wood, just being like, oh no, you don't. Just trying to push that thing down, like comment away. Because have you heard some of the singing attempts in old anime dubs? It is horrifying. And it's because the directors didn't really know what to do. And it didn't help either that some of the actors back then I don't think they knew how to sing. Or if the joke was that the singing is supposed to be terrible, well, congrats. The punchline works too well and it's not funny.
They make that joke once here, but the difference
but
is it's funny and it's endearing.
Oh yeah, when they all start to sing at that big moment among the solar panels, Thunder is just off key. They're all off key except for Shion, but it was funny because it's cute and like super sweet. And then I guess it's like if you had to ding the story for one thing, the villain is not that interesting. He's just, I mean, on one hand, he's a lot more of a realistic villain because let's just say that like the film points out that the company that all the parents somewhat work for is kind of macho and toxic in that regard. So let's just, very masculine.
Mhm.
It's like men run everything, even though it's like that's not a healthy mindset to have, buddy.
Not in the slightest.
So in a lot of ways, he's a lot more real as a villain, but it's like it's almost kind of like he's too obviously evil. Like, not that I wanted like a Ghibli like turnaround where he's like, maybe I did this incorrectly. That's not the kind of movie that this film is aiming for.
For better or for worse, what they were going for with the antagonist is it's established at the start of the film that Satomi's mom basically had to force her way up to the top of the food chain at her company. But because it's like pretty much male dominated, she's been making a lot of enemies. And the main antagonist in this film is like just the biggest corporate douchebag you could imagine.
He's a sexist piece of garbage. And even like the person that she works with is just the worst. And
you mean the guy who takes Shion to and from school?
Yeah. Because he's just like, he's always very hesitant about what they're doing. And then he actually doesn't do a whole lot to help.
He's just really just a waste of space.
Well, he's a literal toady, not just in looks, but just characteristics. And it was just like the movie's villains are what the story needed. And then it's a lot of this story is about how humans and technology and AI interact. And I'm kind of glad that it's a lot more optimistic with its outlook. I know it's very easy just to dive into like, oh boy, here comes Skynet from Terminator.
I'm glad that this is taking like sort of the opposite angle. I didn't want to compare this to Belle, but what this movie kind of has in common with Hosoda's filmography is the more optimistic approach to technology.
That's what I like, because I feel like there can be good things. I know the rotten, stanky garbage of NFTs and cryptocurrency is a thing right now, and was so much of last year. Good Lord, I was so sick and tired of hearing about that stuff. But a lot of technology can be used for good. And I'm glad that the film has a lot of characters realizing like, hey, this literally a piece of technology and AI helped bring these people together. So it's obviously very pro technology. And I'm glad that's not like a super technophobic kind of story, because that seems to be a thing with animation fans also. Just like, oh, it was made on a computer. Oh, such rubbish. Which, it's like, come on.
There's a twist that we've been kind of dancing around. You want to dive a little bit into that?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
As it turns out, Shion, as we know her, has actually been alive, quote unquote, longer than everyone thinks. I said this in my review that this is probably one of the best examples of a Chekhov's gun with the, I guess, Tamagotchi knockoff thing that we see in like the start of the film that you don't think is really that important to the narrative until it's revealed A, what Toma did to the thing, B, Satomi's mother thought of his improvements, and then how that got incorporated into the creation of the AI. I thought the way they tied everything together like that was kind of brilliant.
Yeah, and just how, the AI evolved over the years to follow Satomi, and it's just very sweet. And I love that like the first one to go after Shion was Thunder. Like he had a whole bag of like baseball bats and clubs ready to basically barge in there, guns a blazing. It was just very cute. I love that. And when he asks Shion out, and he's just like, "Will you go out with me after all this?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And they're like, "Wait, what? Why?" Well, it's like, "Well, going outside is fun." And then Satomi and Toma look at each other. It's like, "Oh dear, she doesn't know what that means." And oh, it's just that third act's a lot of fun, and a lot of the film's best visuals are there, and heartbreaking moments also. It just landed perfectly. I just loved how well executed this overall story is. Now, I do have a few little criticisms that just bugged me about the film.
Okay.
So, but in the end, I can get over them because of how well executed everything was. While this does look a lot better than a lot of JC staff productions, I think the animation almost teeters on just being slightly better animation of what they normally put out. Not that like there's anything wrong with it, it's handled well. It just doesn't have as much pizzazz as I think it maybe wanted. A couple of the setups for the songs aren't as interesting as I personally think they were. Like I thought the first song that she fully sings, it's just like, "Oh, I'm running through the hallways and now I'm out at the I guess baseball field
Something
or
like that.
or something like that." And then that's it. I thought like the best ones were the solar panel location and the judo sequence had the best songs and visuals too. Like I guess I just wanted there to be like a little more to how the shots were composed. Like if you're making a movie, I want to see something a little flashier than just slightly better animation.
I can see where you're coming from with that. It's really not until the second half that the visuals really start to flare up.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at JC Staff's filmography just to see if anything necessarily stands out. And most of what I'm seeing is a bunch of franchise films. This is like one of like their rare original works. So maybe just they're, I don't want to say out of practice, but
No. JC Staff has been around forever, and we've talked about a ton of anime that they've made.
I'm looking at some of these titles and yeah, they've been on the podcast a couple times.
Yeah, during our big anime roundups, and they can do really good stuff. They just need a pretty proper team to do so. But hey, they've also made Konosuba, and that's like one of the funniest anime ever. And part of that is because it's slightly rough around the edges at points. And they're a good studio. They've done good work. So it's not like they don't do anything good. So
Right. They have a reputation behind them.
like I don't blame them for stuff like The Way of the House Husband because, well, that's a production side of things. JC staff were just like, okay, we'll do this, I guess. I think that's really it for my issues with the overall movie. Like, really, it was just like the dance sequences could have been, and musical sequences could have been a little punchier. The animation is just like, it's really good. There's just don't expect anything super flashy until the second half. And I saw a ton of studios that helped with the film. So I think that's kind of interesting and maybe a little worrying that it's like, hey, you got a bunch of studios to help. Is that because you didn't have enough people working on the film?
That's always an interesting question when you see multiple logos before a film.
Only because I ask this due to the current situation with the anime industry and such.
Oh, of course.
Because I don't know, it becomes less like, oh, it's a collaborative effort. That's going to be amazing. And it's more like, something tells me there's something up. And of course, sometimes the CGI can be a little wonky, but it's not used a whole lot.
They're very smart about the way they use CGI in this film.
And they've done like solid CGI work before, like with High Score Girl and The Duke of Death and His Maid. So it's not like they don't have experience with CGI. It's just like they do what they needed to do.
Right.
Do you have anything else to add about the movie?
The only other thing I have to add is depending on how you feel about the ending, you will know whether or not this movie worked for you on the whole. If you are someone who is in a very depressive state, the ending to this film is like, the way I describe it would be the let me see you grit your teeth moment from Gurren Lagann.
I don't have much else to say. Like Ryo Takahashi does a good job with the music. He's done work for stuff like Skate the Infinity and Gate Leading Stars. Apparently has a thing about skating. I really enjoyed it. And so far, it's going to be the best film of the year so far. I mean, it's January. Take that with what you will.
But yeah, the year is young, but it's honestly off to a great start.
It very much is. It could be worse. We can go back to 2016 and start with Norma the North. Oh, people, you could have waited and watched Kung Fu Panda 2 weeks later after that film came out. I'm just saying. People from 2016, shame on you. From 2022. But yeah, Funimation is currently putting it out in a small theatrical release. I'm not entirely sure how easily people are going to be able to see this film. But if you can and you feel safe to go to a theater, I'd recommend it.
Same. I have no idea where it's even playing near me, but if you're lucky enough to stumble upon a screening, I would take full advantage of that if I were you. Otherwise, much like how I had to wait several months to see Josie the Tiger and the Fish, I'm afraid you may have to do the same for this one.
Well, luckily it did get like a small release, like it got its official release last year in October, like in Japan,
right?
To be clear,
on my birthday too.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that maybe we won't have to wait too long for this film to pop up on Blu-ray.
I'm going to guess like April or May at the earliest.
Hopefully. But you know how these things turn out. It's such a nightmare to try to figure out how these copyright stuff works with distribution and releases. So, but yeah, good on Funimation for putting out a really rock solid movie. Just a lot of fun. It's really for the whole family. Like anyone could watch this film and enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
Now for recommendations, I'm going to keep the anime to myself for this time so we can save all the juicy discussions for our next 2 anime episodes. But, you know, a brand new batch of Looney Tunes cartoons came out, and the few that I have watched have been really good.
Isn't one of them a Rocky short?
Yeah, there's this one early on where Porky Pig is in a boxing match, and for a lot of the runtime of the short, it's all in that one corner, and they just take full advantage of all the visual gags and such they can pull with that. And they did do something different. Sylvester got his own solo episode.
No way.
So Tweety was nowhere to be found from what I remember from the short, but he ends up in a big bird sanctuary. So a lot of the jokes are going to be around the different kind of birds Sylvester encounters, and it's very funny. And so far they do bring back, all the dynamics like Elmer Fudd with Daffy or Elmer Fudd with Bugs. And so far I haven't seen anything too like different or distinct, which has been kind of the thing I want to see from these shorts. It's like, okay, we get it. Daffy and Bugs and Elmer are all great when they all have to deal with one another, but I want to see either other characters or different shakeups with the characters themselves. But that doesn't mean that they aren't good shorts. They're delightful. I hope they can make as many of these as the creators want to. That'll be my recommendation for this week.
My recommendations, and I'm sorry, I don't know if these are ever going to get like a stateside release, but I kind of have to bring back two films that we talked about in our Annecy 2020, Old Man the Movie and The Nose. And the reason I bring these up is because these are just examples of the types of off-kilter kind of avant-garde films that I want to see get a wider release, whether it's on Netflix or probably even the Criterion Collection.
Criterion presents The Old Man Movie. Oh gosh, I mean, hey, they could, but I do think The Old Man Movie does have a US distributor.
Okay, good, because I need more people to discover this one just for the sheer insanity
of the plot. It's absurd and hilarious. Yeah. And as far as The Nose, I just don't know who's going to pick it up. I wish someone would, because I remember really liking that movie 2 years ago.
Same. Really, I'm using my recommendation space to basically call out the G Kids, the Neons, the smaller distributors want to try to break into the more independent animation scene, because this is really the only way to push the medium forward and to get animation as far away from the age ghetto as possible.
Yeah, just stop trying to think, oh, this will be for kids and this is for adults or whatever. Just bring it over. There are audiences for these films. And that's, again, like, people are like, well, why don't you all talk about the films from these other countries? And it's like, I've either never heard of them or I've heard about them, but I've had no way of accessing them. And a lot of that is because of distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be nice if there were other distributors picking up some of these animated films that are coming out. And a lot of them aren't as like super niche and not profitable as you would think. Like, I think a lot of people could get into The Nose. There's definitely some Russian history context, but I think that can easily be, like, you could get into the film without knowing too much about it.
If anything, a movie like that will sort of inspire people to kind of dig into Russian history. Those are my recommendations and my general call to arms for independent distributors. We're taking a little bit of a hiatus, as our next podcast will be part one of the winter 2022 Cold as Ice anime season.
Oh, I've been feeling cold about some of these anime. No. Or they've left me cold, or, ice pun insert here. We'll be able to enjoy it then. And depending on if we can make it work, we'll also try to get a small, quick review out, a podcast out of the Ice Age film that's coming out to Disney Plus. Beforehand. So
Adventures of Buck Wild.
Yeah.
But until then, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Cam's Eye View. I run my own website called camseyeview.biz, where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. If you like my work, you can support me that way.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can find me in all the various Facebook groups just at my name. You can check out Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can look for us on Podchaser. And if you like our stuff, you can check us out on all of the podcast venues: Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave a like, subscribe, and
a rating.
Yes, this will help us out greatly. You can also look for us on the new Banana Meter website, a critic collective. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. that'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you guys later. Peace out.